Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Never Split Up podcast. This is episode 30. We have a special episode for you guys. We're covering the original Insidious, released in 2010. And we also have a very special guest. Along with Anthony, we have my wife, Jackie, who is in a different room right now because we have gotten into an argument. No, no, I'm just kidding. We had some audio difficulties setting up everything with her next to me, so she has to use her laptop, which is why she's in a different room if you're watching on YouTube and on Spotify. But we kind of took a mini vacation. We wanted to let the holiday breathe a little bit. We released our special holiday episode, but now we're back with Insidious, and I mentioned my wife Jackie is on the podcast. She loves Insidious. It's her favorite franchise, or one of her favorite franchises. We can get into that. But how you doing, first of all, Jackie?
Hello, I'm doing good. I'm glad to be on finally.
Yeah, this was one of the first movies when I brought up this podcast and told Jackie that we were starting this podcast. She said, I have to be on for Insidious. For a couple different reasons. We'll get into one of the reasons a little bit later because I don't want to spoil things. But she had to be on this episode. Yeah, well, that. But
I was gonna say.
no, it's. I mean, I guess I can just say it. I kind of tease her about this movie because she loves it way more than I do. So she said she had to come on and quote unquote defend this movie, even though I don't dislike this movie. I just tease her about it all the time because I know how much she loves it, and I know you love it too, Anthony. So this is going to be a fun episode. Yeah, this is going to be a big one too because this is kind of like, how do you feel about this movie in terms of like how it's placed in the horror genre? I mean, it's kind of like a newer classic, similar to Conjuring in a way.
Yes.
Do you want to talk on that real quick?
I would really relate this franchise a lot to The Conjuring. I think this franchise does certain things better than The Conjuring. And I think that if you ask people what their favorite supernatural haunting movie is of the last, 10, 15 years, you'll get a lot of people who say Insidious. And it's one of the most effective PG-13 horror movies I've ever seen. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that's a good segue to just kind of talk about our overall thoughts. But before we do that, do you want to go over just like we usually do, like the cast and crew and stuff, talk about the movie? I don't know if you have a synopsis pulled up or anything.
Yeah, I'll just do the typical IMDb stuff. So like you said, it was actually came out at Toronto International Film Festival in 2010, but the rest of real life, all the real people, we didn't get to see it until 2011, spring of 2011. That's when it was released, nationwide for everybody. So it was a good hit. It was, I think, made for like a shoestring budget of like $1 million, and it ended up making over 100 million. So killed it. And it's directed by James Wan. So if you're a horror fan, you should know who James Wan is, of Saw, The Conjuring, Dead Silence, Malignant. He's creating a lot of franchises. He's awesome. And it was written by Lee Wanell, who they're really good as friends, Australian friends. They collaborated on Saw, and they've stuck together ever since for the most part. Lee Wanell went off and did his own thing, but great duo, and you can tell with these, especially these first two movies, that they work very well together. But the synopsis is: a family looks to prevent evil spirits from trapping their comatose child in a realm called the Further. And it stars the daddy, Patrick Wilson, the lovely Rose Byrne, and Ty Simpkins plays Dalton. He's a little kid. And we have Lynn Shay, who plays Elise. Horror fans know her from her little cameo in A Nightmare on Elm Street. Lee Wanell actually makes a cameo too. He's one of the detective specs. And we have Tucker, who's played by Angus Sampson, and Barbara Hershey, who's another horror icon. She plays the grandmother, Lorraine. So pretty awesome cast too for this little horror movie.
Yeah, it is for sure. Okay, cool. Let's get into our overall thoughts. Jackie, why don't you go first and kind of tell us, if you're new to this podcast, we've been starting to do this section where we kind of recommend the movie or not for people who haven't seen it. So we don't get into spoilers right away, but we're just going to give our overall thoughts and whether or not we recommend the movie. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, obviously 100% recommend this movie to anybody. I don't know if this is wrong because I feel like not that I'm desensitized to this movie, but I've watched it so many times. But I feel like it's a good, I forget what other movie you guys said this about, but I feel like it's a good starter movie because I feel like this is where
Gateway.
one
Yeah.
of the yeah, like a good gateway one because, I mean, to me, it's fun. I know a lot of people that have seen this do get really scared by it. But I feel like it is a good gateway movie because it is PG-13 and it's, I don't know, fun. I do love this movie. Rewatching it, I don't really, it's just good. I don't know what else to say. Like, I feel like watch it. There's really nothing better than Patrick Wilson being the dad. And then I love the like the paranormal piece of like, I feel like there's no other word, but like with Elise, I don't know, I think that's a really good addition to it. Elise is, for people who have not watched it, she's that helps this family through what the haunting that they are going through. And it's just fun. It's hard not to give spoilers.
It's a fun house ride.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun. I feel like it's a good gateway. It's hard to not give spoilers with that, but I definitely do recommend it to anybody.
Okay. I'll go next just because you mentioned the fact that you're kind of desensitized to it because we've seen it so many times. I like this movie and I do recommend it to people, horror veterans or newcomers alike, even though it is PG-13. The reason I don't love this movie as much as other people is because when it did first come out, and you mentioned this, Jackie, people were like freaked out by this movie. Like it was a pretty big hit, and I remember a lot of people like our age, Anthony, we were like 18, 19 years old, I think, 2010, 2011. I remember seeing a lot of people on like social media and stuff like saying it's the scariest movie they've ever seen, and the lipstick demon is like super creepy, and the jump scares like really got them. I didn't get that because I am such a horror geek by then that like I just looked at it as like this cool movie, like PG-13 movie. So I feel like in a way it's a bit overrated. But I don't want to say that in the lens that like I don't like the movie, because I really do like the movie. And this is why I tease Jackie a lot, and this is why she wanted to be on the podcast, because I talk about how overrated the movie is. But I really just say it tongue-in-cheek because I remember like how scared people were of this movie. I never really got that, and I never really understood it either, because I think one of the weak points of this movie is, especially the first movie, is like the villains and stuff. They don't really do it for me. But I do like this movie. I'm starting to get negative already, but I do like this movie. I think you mentioned the all-star cast. It's phenomenally acted. Patrick Wilson is awesome. He's awesome throughout the entire franchise. He's great in the second one too. The woman who plays Elise, Lynn Shay, is great. She was obviously a standout because they did two, prequel movies about her. I think they realized their mistake in killing her. Kind of similar to the Saw franchise, but did I just spoil it?
Spoiler. I told you.
See, I get ahead of myself. Yeah, we'll cut that out.
No, you can leave it.
I'll put like a big disclaimer on the video right before I say it.
Or does she die? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say when she dies. She could die at any point in the franchise. I didn't really.
You said it though. You did say it.
So
right,
is it a recommend or not, man?
I said it. I said it's a recommend. I said it multiple times. Yeah.
All right. So you guys have you guys do have different opinions on this one.
Yeah, I mean, she's just a little bit more high on it than I am, but it's a recommend for me.
I wish I was explaining this more. Just feel like it's hard without spoiling it.
Well, we'll get into that very soon.
Yeah, but I feel like one other thing I wanted to add is because me and Nolan were talking about this, of like, I do not fully remember when I saw this, sadly, like the first time I watched it. It might have been in the theaters, but I was 2010. Oh no,
11. It
2011
would
it
have been
came
11.
out.
Yeah.
You were like
Oh, maybe I
a few
did
years younger than
14,
us, so like
15.
16. You were probably like 16,
I
You
15
probably
or
definitely
did see
saw
it in
us
16.
in
the
the theaters,
theater.
Jackie. You
Yeah.
definitely did.
Yeah, I definitely, because that was when I was seeing like horror movies in the theater and stuff, when I finally was allowed with my friends. But yeah, I remember seeing it, and that's what got me into horror was really Insidious. And it did freak me out for the longest time. Now I feel like it's more fun, and I do love the movie. It doesn't scare me as much as it did. But I think that's why I love it a lot more than you do, Nolan, because I think you're already like you were already into horror rather than needing a gateway.
Well, you went
Mhm.
in with the hype, it sounds like, too.
And
Like, you went
that's
in with the
Yeah.
hype.
yeah, that's awesome to hear because that's kind of why that movie was made as a PG-13 movie to get people. I mean, you were like the prime target. You were like 14, 15 years old, was like kind of into horror, not really, and that like helped you get into the genre. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Do you want to expand on that a little bit? Because, you know, this is your first episode. I believe we did this with Peanut. We kind of asked her how she got into horror. You kind of touched on it, but
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit more, Jackie, of like what your favorite type of horror is and like what else got you into horror and like kind of like how you got into it? Because you said you didn't really grow up with it like we did when you were younger.
Yeah. So it's a little different than you guys, because you guys grew up a lot on the classics, which I didn't, sadly. My parents were very huge, or are very huge movie people, so we were always going to the movies. But yeah, my mom and dad would not touch scary movies. So my childhood friend, we were friends since we were 10. She actually got me into horror movies. Scream, I do remember watching that for the first time. That yeah. Um, and loved that movie so much. And then we just watched. She chose more newer movies. It was always her and like more obscure movies. I don't know, Aunt, if you ever seen like Amusement
Of course.
or oh my god, that movie or Grace. Have you ever seen that one?
Oh, yeah, I've seen that
The Cannibal Baby. Yeah. So like I watch.
movie.
I don't. We watch those instead. Then like more of the classics of like Halloween and Friday the 13th. We watch more of like those obscure movies and newer movies like Orphan, that type of
Amazing.
thing. Another amazing movie, which I do want to be on for Orphan because
Okay.
that's close to
Okay.
my heart too. So kind of with that started it, but I feel like when I really thought about it, because I figured you guys were going to ask me this, I first went to Halloween Horror Nights in Universal Studios, and this is such a weird segue, but that was in 2015, and I was still kind of like scared of like still had that like scared feeling with like horror movies and like and then like when you're in Halloween Horror Nights, if you ever can go, everyone should go that loves horror. You're basically in the movie set. So I
Yeah.
remember going to the Insidious one, and there was a last part of the hand just going like this. Like I that's think that was their job. And I thought that they touched me. And I remember running out screaming. Like that house freaked me out. And that's how I was with horror, but like I got more into it as I went to more of that stuff, and started watching more of the classics and all the movies. So kind of movies, but I feel like that kind of atmosphere got me more into horror, which I feel like is different than you guys too. So I wanted to share that, but I just thought that was interesting because I was like, I feel like I didn't get too into it until I really went to horror nights for whatever reason.
Hmm.
Because they had classics there. Like I remember doing the Michael Myers Halloween house and that type of thing.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
definitely
definitely a
different
unique.
perspective.
Yeah, that's a unique backstory of how you got into horror. A lot of people have like an older sibling or parents, but that's pretty cool. So you were like, in your 20s by then, right? Or like about 20, 21?
19?
Okay,
1920?
19. Yeah, so you were like pretty much an adult. And now,
I
so
still, don't get
now,
me wrong, I still loved horror, but it wasn't like I
yeah.
do like then, from then on.
Yeah, and I've talked about you before on this podcast how we love watching horror together. I mean, now we're pretty much known as the horror couple. We watch horror movies all the time together. So Yeah, that's great. Ant, you want to talk about your overall thoughts and if you recommend?
Yeah,
And then we'll get into it.
for sure. So let me tell you something. I saw this movie opening night in a packed house, and it is one of the best theater experiences I've ever had in my life. It was fucking awesome. People were hiding their faces. The jump scares were so effective. Everyone was literally jumping out of their seats, screaming, but not annoying. They weren't like doing it on purpose. It was like actually scaring them. It was one of the most fun times I've ever had in a theater. I went with my sister, and she was like doing like because the build up to the jump scares I think are excellent. She was like hiding her face. It's so good. There'll never be a time like the first time watching this movie, which is what I agree with Jackie on. Like now,
Yeah.
it's you watch it for the funhouse ride, but that first time in the theater, the scares were awesome. The atmosphere that James Wan created was so good. I think The Further is awesome and so creative once you go in there. It's like an own little mini world, so that's why I think like the climaxes of these movies almost outdo the climaxes of the Conjuring movies because they're a little more creative. Yeah, I'm in love with this movie. It's an all timer haunted house supernatural horror movie for me, and it's not my favorite PG-13 horror movie, but it's one of my favorite PG-13 horror movies. Top 5 PG-13 horror movies. James Wan and Lee Winnell work so well together, and I actually think the heart and soul acting wise for Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2. I can't speak on the new one yet because I'm going to see that tonight, but I think the heart and soul of these movies is actually Rose Byrne, who plays the wife. She's the heart and soul of these movies. She keeps the family together, Renee. So, but they're all excellent. But yeah, she's my girl.
Keeps the family going.
She
Yeah, I mean,
does.
especially the first two movies,
Yeah.
she freaking carries that family, man. She's like the only
Yeah.
like one that's like, I hate to say
We need to
sane,
do
but
something.
she's
We
the
need to
only
do
like,
something.
yeah, she's the only one that's like focused on the mission. So yeah, okay, cool, awesome. So all three.
So yeah, recommend.
Recommend.
Big recommend for me. Yeah.
Is this like a must see? Is that in that category
For me, it's
you?
a must.
Okay,
Yeah.
if someone hasn't seen it, yeah.
Yeah, must watch.
I mean, if someone's into supernatural horror and they haven't seen this movie, that's pretty unique. I doubt we're going to get any listeners that fit into that category because it was a pretty big release and it's pretty iconic now. But it's possible. So yeah, okay, cool. So let's
You
get
want a
into
haunted house ride? Watch it. I mean, if you want a haunted house pop out fun ride, it's like you're going to a walkthrough, pretty much.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's get into it. Let's dive into the
Spoilers.
review. Yeah. Full on spoilers, except the ones we already said, or I already said. It's okay.
You're not
We'll
me.
just keep going. Yeah, take it away, Ant. Why don't you bring us through the the opening?
Well, now that we before we do that, just I know we're gonna do a little backers, but you blew the lid in the beginning and you said a certain character dies. I think the ending of this movie is the most effective ending in the entire franchise. The first movie, the ending is amazing. What they do to Elise and how they end it with Renee just turning around and Josh asking if she's okay, and then it just cuts to that. But we didn't even. None of us spoke on that. The score in this movie, A plus plus
Mhm.
plus 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 plus. One of my favorite horror movie scores. The violins, it's just amazing. So good. But I think the ending is like shocking and awesome. Such a good twist. But yeah, just wanted to say that because we already kind of gave away that big fan favorite dies in the first movie of the franchise. But they're creative enough to find a way to bring her back because the further. But yeah, it's a great ending. But yeah, the beginning is, and also I think the beginning is a nice intro to the whole movie, the vibe too. And we don't know it's young Josh, but we pretty much start the movie with young Josh in bed, and we get that cool shot of the woman in the black bride, pretty much, and then we cut to the title card. And I love myself a good title card, and this one's badass. And then we get the whole credits with the creepy ghosts and shit. Good intro to like the ride you're about to have, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely. I'm not a huge fan of like long credits sequences, so I thought that
Oh, really?
could have been trimmed down a little bit. I know you appreciate that
I
a little
love
bit
it.
more, but
Love it.
yeah, the title card is pretty iconic, and it's a throughout this franchise. It has that same title card, I think, in every movie. It's been a while since I've seen The Last Key, but I'm sure it has it in The Last Key too. So that's pretty iconic. The opening, like once you hear, like you said, once you hear that score and that like sharp pitched sound with the
So
Insidious
good.
title card, you know you're in in good hands. So, yeah, I like the beginning. Where does it pick up after we see the sequence?
We pretty
now I'm a little
much do
fuzzy.
that, then the
Just a
credits, and
disclaimer.
then we
I'm
get
sorry if
introduced.
Ant hasn't seen the new one yet, but
Oh yeah, I have not.
Jackie and
Yeah.
I just saw the new one this morning. We went and saw it early, so I apologize if I accidentally get things mixed up because I'm still trying to get my mind back to Insidious 1. So we watched the first Insidious earlier, and then we went and saw the most recent Insidious, so like my mind's kind of
Red
scrambled.
Door.
So you might need to help me a little bit. But what are we on now? So what's the opening scene after the credits?
Right after we see little Josh and the Black Bride and the credits, we get introduced to the family like right away. Renee comes downstairs to find Dalton. He's like awake downstairs looking at like family photos or something, and they have their little cute moment, and then they're all in matching pajamas.
So cute.
We get introduced to the family pretty much. Josh is a teacher. He's working. They just moved into a new house. Renee's a little overwhelmed. She has a baby, a young kid, and then Dalton's probably like, I don't know, I would say maybe 10. He's young, 8, 10, 8 to 10 in that age group. So they have 3 kids. She's a stay-at-home mom. She gave up her career, typical like setup of movies. She's the stay-at-home mom. He goes to work. She's overwhelmed. He's, blah, blah, blah. But they just moved into a new house, stressful. But she noted, I think right in the opening, we already see like she put books on the shelf, but then she goes back and they're on the floor. So like little things like that James Wan's already doing. But you almost immediately relate to this family because they don't feel like actors. They feel like an actual family. Again, that's credit to the writing and the acting. But I fell in love with them immediately. So I knew I was going to care about everything that happened to them.
Okay. It's a little cookie cutter for me. Just in the fact that, it's fine. The fact that they're moving into a new house. I mean, that's pretty standard for supernatural horror movies when you have like a haunting or whatever. But they don't even really try to like expand on that. I believe, Jackie, you mentioned it to me. Like, they don't really even really explain like why they moved. They kind of like alluded to the fact that they're having trouble like with their marriage and stuff, but they kind of just threw us into this new house, and you're kind of just
cool house.
supposed to. Yeah, it is a really cool house, yeah. But you don't really get anything.
Assumed it was they have a baby, so that's why they moved because they needed a bigger house.
A bigger house,
baby.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, there's a part, I can't remember when it is, but she was like, I wanted this new start, and we were having a hard time. I just felt like I wanted them to expand on that more. I assume that was like postpartum or something with the baby.
I think she just feels like doesn't have, like, she's just a mom, and that's her only purpose, and she wants more of a purpose than that. So she's like, fed up.
And it's funny you say you kind of fall in love with this family, Anthony, because I feel the opposite. I mean,
really?
Josh is like not a great dad in this movie, especially the beginning. I mean, he's pretty disconnected. Jackie's shaking her head. What, do you want to back me up on this, Jackie?
I do, because I don't know why I've never noticed it, and I've seen this movie so many times. I watched it yesterday. I watched 1 and 2 yesterday back to back, and I was like, wow, he's an asshole. Like, he, like, even in the beginning,
husband.
Well, yeah, like, I was like, even when he just comes in, he's like, okay, bye, and I'm like, did I just get blinded of how much I love Patrick? I never noticed that. Like, he's kind of already distant, which, I guess when you further think of the movie, it makes sense.
Right. Well, when you find out his backstory, it also makes sense. He's kind of like already disconnected from things. But I relate to Renee so much in the beginning, especially when she's trying to talk to whatever customer service, like, speak to an agent. I feel that girl. I feel that girl so much when she does it on the phone.
Yeah.
I love her. She's my favorite character in this franchise.
One of my first thoughts in the beginning, the baby monitor, it just made me think, iconic. I'm so glad it's more sophisticated now, so when I can see a ghost before I enter the room and it'll say motion detected, because I'm just like, yeah, no, there's no way. Because she was hearing something and you didn't even have the full volume, like when it
So like
lights
the
up.
dots that popped up, right?
Yeah, it was like, no, thank you.
So that sequence is iconic and so effective, and that's not even a jump scare. That's just like pure suspense and creepiness. Love
Mhm.
it. Love
This
it. Love
that
it.
yeah,
Love it.
that's
Love it.
one of the we'll talk about that now. That's one of the sequences is one of my favorites because it's not just a cheap jump scare. It's I think this is one of the legitimate, even watching it now, creepy moments in the movie where
I love it.
they don't really get into that a lot. They kind of use that in the beginning and they kind of abandon that whole concept of like them like whispering in the room and stuff. I wish they kind of did that a little bit more throughout the movie because that was really creepy and it still is pretty creepy.
So good.
Yeah.
So damn good.
Now, is that
Uh,
do we know if that's Lipstick Face Demon or who that
It's
was
not.
in the baby monitor? It's not really
no,
said.
I
Like,
don't
what do
think
you
that's
think?
him.
What do
Yeah,
you think
no.
that was? Because do you think it was talking to the baby? Because it was in the baby's room, or do you think it was talking to Renee through the monitor, knowing it was like her listening? Because I'm still confused on that.
You can go,
I
Jackie.
I took it as because he like that same guy like fights, well, like jumping, but like he has a fight scene with Josh in the further. So I just assume he was just because there's many of them, the
There's
people in
so
the
many
further
spirits, so it's hard to.
trying to get there. So I think that was one trying to maybe latch onto the baby because they were trying to hurt the baby technically because they like put her on the ground and stuff.
That poor baby in the first movie and especially the second movie. Damn.
Yeah, that's what I kind of. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of the second movie. That
No, in the
watching
first
them
one, the
back to
baby.
back
No, in the
doesn't.
first one, the baby does end up on the ground. I think too,
Yeah,
like
does she?
out of the
Okay,
crib.
I just
But in the second one, I think it literally gets like slapped.
Yeah,
Oh
I never.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
So why don't we get to the, I guess, the incident before we go too far with Dalton? He sneaks into the attic. Again,
Uh-huh.
classic, attic haunting, creepy attic scene, which
Yeah,
I have no problem with. I'm a fan of those,
yeah,
classic cliches. But I love how they like film it. They don't show anything. We just hear like the crackling of the lips. Like you just hear the crackling. And he turns around and then he falls off the ladder and hits his head. And he gets up and he hears it again. And then obviously the parent Renee and Josh come up and find him like, "Oh, you hit your head, you idiot! You're not allowed up here." Um, I don't know. I like the sound again. The sound effects in this movie are so good. I'm happy we didn't see anything in the attic. We just saw Dalton's reaction. I really liked how they did that. And then he goes to sleep, and Josh goes to wake him up in the morning. And he doesn't wake up. He's in a coma. It's
terrible
fucked up.
parents. Yeah, I mean, your son just fell from a ladder, probably has a concussion, and you let him fall asleep for the night. So, like, are
Eh,
you surprised he's in a coma?
he seemed
Ob-
fine though. He
he
seemed
seemed
fine.
fine. Yeah, that's like the one thing they tell you not to do is like let them fall asleep. I
I'd be
always
such
laugh
a
at
bad
that.
parent. Like, all right, kids, sleep it off, man.
Yeah, I always laugh at that. But they get validated because he goes to the hospital and the doctor says there's nothing wrong with him whatsoever.
Right,
He's
right,
totally fine. His brain function is fine. We're gonna run some more tests, but we don't know what's going on, like why he's not
right.
waking up. So that's pretty
Right.
scary. I mean,
They can't do anything either
that's
way. Like he's just
pretty.
kind of in that state.
Yeah,
That's horrible.
it's terrifying when you really think about it, like how that can just happen. Nobody knows what's going on, so I can't imagine what they're going through. Um, I love the scene, and tell me if I'm skipping ahead too much, but I love the scene when they take him home for the first time, and
Well, we should say
Renee.
that it cuts to 3 months later. Like it's been 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, he's in a coma.
Yeah, so it's been, yeah, you're right. So it's been 3 months before they take him home, right? Like he's been in the hospital for 3 months. I think that's
They
how
just
it
like
plays
they're
out.
in the hospital, and then it kind of like cuts to black, and it just says 3 months later. So I'm not sure exactly when they brought him home. I think they did end up bringing him home about 3 months later because the nurse is there setting everything up. I think you
Well,
might be
yeah,
right.
this is the scene I'm
Um,
talking about because the nurse is explaining to Renee how to like care for him and how to
right,
change his fluids, and she has that moment where she's just like realizing like this is like my life right now, and this is my
right.
son, like,
Such
and
oh,
he's like, it's pretty powerful, that little like subtle acting they do in that moment. I love that moment. But
yeah, you can feel her pain, like just from her like her facial acting. You just like,
yeah,
oh, you just want to give her a hug.
I know. I feel so bad for her. She's so good at like
Specifically her.
those
Specifically her.
terrifying
Yeah.
like shouts and screams when she's like calling for her family and stuff. Like she's so good at that, Rose
And
Byrne.
this is where I would argue that Josh is a worse husband than dad, because he just pretty much is like, all right, I know he has to work, but he's like, you're at home, like you take care of everyone, you take care of Dolan, like I'm gonna be at work and not deal with it. And he even, I know he starts to stay late at work, like once the like hauntings start more for obvious reasons, but that we find out eventually. But even in the beginning, it's not like he's coming home like on a lunch break, or like he's not helping her as much as she should be. It's pretty much her, and he's just like, I'm the money, and that's it. Like, it's kind of fucked up.
See, now you're seeing. Yeah, he came home
Well, I'm
at
seeing the husband side of things, not the
11:30.
dad, because I know he loves the kids. Like he's very cute with
No,
the
yeah,
kids.
I
It's
wasn't
just, yeah,
saying that, but like it's
yeah.
more. I was seeing it more.
Yeah, he
in
comes
her
home really
eyes,
late,
where
but
I'd
I
be
think that's when
pissed.
he starts realizing, because he starts looking at the pictures. I think that's when he starts like subconsciously remembering like he went through shit as a kid. So I get that part. I
No,
know
that
he has
wasn't until
trauma
the new
too.
house.
No, that's before the new house when he's staying late, right? He doesn't remember until the new house, but I think he stays late that one day because Renee keeps telling him that like shit's happening in the house. He doesn't want to deal with it.
Oh, yeah, but he
So I
didn't see
almost
his
think he's
pictures
kind of
yet.
no. They show it to him at the like halfway point. But yeah, it's a complicated relationship that everyone has, pretty much.
I think it's a commentary on, like you said, like how he's the breadwinner and you
Right.
fall into that pattern of just kind of expecting your spouse as a stay-at-home mom to just kind of take care of it. Like
Right.
everything at home you take care of, and like I work, you do this, you don't need help. I do enough for this. So I think it's definitely a commentary how families can kind of fall into that pattern and not, kind of, I guess the husband definitely, I mean, I would say takes her for granted for sure. What she does,
100%.
especially throughout this movie, but even before it really picks up, I mean, you could tell she's underappreciated. She has a love for music. She plays the piano. So we see
comes
that.
into play.
Yeah, that comes into play. But you could tell, like, she wants a little bit more out of, just being the mother. She wants to kind of have time for
Right.
herself and stuff. So, yeah. He's not a good dad, and he's not a good husband. I don't even think he's a good dad. I don't know why.
But
You
he's
defend that
Patrick
question.
Wilson, so he gets a pass.
Yeah, I
He's
guess.
fucking
Yes, he
awesome in the
does.
movie. He's such a good actor in the movie.
I would have
Yes.
stayed married to him too. It's okay, Rose. Renee.
Honestly, who wouldn't? He's Patrick Wilson. But I think that's pretty much when the scene when she's playing the piano, we get that awesome iconic sequence we just spoke about earlier. When she's playing the piano, trying to write that song for Josh. Actually, the song that she's singing, she's making for him, which is, again, I don't want to get into it, but it's used so effectively in part two. God, I fucking love part two. But she's writing that song, and then the baby's sleeping. All the kid. I think the one kid's at school, and then Dalton's in his coma upstairs with the baby's sleeping, and she, like Jackie said, that baby monitor. She hears something. The lights start popping up, and then it slowly gets louder, and she's almost in shock because if I were her, like if I was a parent, I would think to immediately run upstairs and like get my kid. But I don't blame her because she's almost like in disbelief with what she's hearing. And I know
Mhm.
I've heard stories of like people like across the street or like other sides of the neighborhood that kind of like can sometimes interfere with baby monitors. So I don't know if she at first is confused and think it's that sort of situation. But by the end, she can literally hear that the voice, because it eventually yells, it's like literally in the house. So I think it's just, again, it's terrifying. And I love, she runs into the danger, obviously, because she has to save her baby. God, Renee's the hero, man. But I love that scene. I love that sequence so much. I know we spoke it a little bit, but it's so perfect. And it's because James Wan is a genius.
Yeah, and then we get the typical, the typical dynamic. They do a lot of cliches in this movie, but they're done well. So
Right.
we get the typical, Josh comes home, doesn't believe her. He even says what you just said, like, "Oh, these things pick up interference all the time. You're being irrational. Like, let's just like think about this. Like, you're under a lot of stress." And that's kind of a theme throughout the movie until the very end when everything kind of comes to a halt. But yeah, that I don't have a problem with that. It kind of doesn't bother me anymore because it's expected, especially in these supernatural movies. There's always going to be the person that's being haunted and then the person that doesn't believe them. So I don't know how you feel about that, but it doesn't actually bother me at all.
No, it's an effective story point. It's it's always going to be effective plot device in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, and I get so annoyed at him that he doesn't believe her, but I think it's because of his repression.
Mm-hmm.
That I feel like it adds another layer of like not just him like not believing her, but like that piece probably comes into play with it too.
Well, yeah, you bring up a good point. I would take it a step further and say it's probably his upbringing with his mother, because as we find out, he has the repressed memories that Elise, like, you know, he meets Elise when he's a kid, and then Elise and his mother. What's his mother's name?
Lorraine.
Lorraine.
Yeah.
They agree to repress his so what is it called, astral projecting. So I can only imagine that
His
growing
memory,
up
pretty
after
much,
the
too. Yeah.
fact that she was like completely anti-spiritual, and all, like, completely. So it makes sense that he doesn't believe in any of that stuff at all. So I think
Right.
that's a good
Mm.
point.
Well, she even has that line when she. I think this is when they move. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but after they move out of the first house into the second house, Lorraine has that line to Renee. She's like, sees a picture, like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you got him to stay still for a picture, because he doesn't usually take pictures anymore because of what happened to him. You know, the Black Bride is in the pictures when he was a kid, getting closer to taking over him. So I think that also shows us that he's slowly um, remembering, and he's the whatever they did to him to repress all that is wearing off, so
Yeah,
he's kind of getting pulled back into it as well. Very smart writing.
yeah. And then
Oh,
you got
the one scene where he falls asleep at work, there's
Hmm.
actually a what's it called, Easter egg.
Yep.
It
Yeah, Saw.
says no Saw, and it says James Wan times 2 on the
Yeah,
detention board.
yeah. And there's
yeah.
the Billy the puppet from Saw.
Yeah.
Love it, love the
I
Easter egg.
Yeah.
never noticed that until I watched it yesterday.
Oh
Oh,
really?
really? It's funny.
Because me and Nolan watched the third one, and there was a James Wan cameo in that.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
was like
he
looking
was
out
actually
for
in it.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah.
was actually in
And
it.
you
So
didn't
I
know
feel
what he
like I was
looked
looking
like, and
out
I'm
for
like,
him.
that's James Wan. You're like, who? And I'm like, the guy's sitting right there. She's like, oh,
No,
wow.
I did. It just didn't like register.
I think one of the best scenes before they move out is when they hear a noise, and then Josh goes to check on it, and then Renee goes to check on the baby, and then that's a good pop out when the face is above the crib. That's the whole night when the whole like the alarm system
Yes.
goes off and all that. I absolutely
Mm-hmm.
love that sequence too. So good.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Very
say. So
good stuff.
this is when things start to escalate. Yeah, let's talk about that sequence, because that's a pretty long one.
Yes,
Because
drawn out.
then you have Josh
Mm-hmm.
kind of going through the house after the alarm goes
Yep.
off. And so there's a figure above the above whose bed? I'm trying to remember
The
what you're talking
baby's
about.
crib.
The
She
baby's
goes like
crib.
when Josh is going to like throughout the house. Renee, rightfully so, goes to check on
Oh
the baby because
yes,
the
yeah,
monitor goes off. She starts
yeah.
crying. And then when she walks in, you look up, and there's just something hovering over the baby, like, but
Hmm.
it's through like the little thing that's over the crib, so you don't like fully see it.
Hmm.
So damn, that got everybody in the theater. That was an awesome jump scare.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when she freaks out and he runs back upstairs,
Yes,
and then he's like, "There's
yes,
nobody here. What are you talking about?"
yeah. And
Yeah,
then he's still, but then the alarm goes off. So he's like, "Holy shit, somebody is here!" And then he goes
yeah.
back. The door's wide open. I love that shot. He just goes down the steps and he just looks, and the door's wide open. So good,
It's
so damn
busted
good.
open.
Yeah,
The lock is like busted
yeah,
off. Do they ever even
yep.
call the cops? I don't think they even call the cops, do they? Or they just move
We
out?
don't see it. We don't
Like, that's
see
a
like if
break
they
in.
do, they
Yeah.
skip that. But we just pretty much cut to because I
Yeah.
think after that, that's when she sees that creepy dude on the balcony. Like the final night in the first house, when she sees the creepy dude walking like back and forth on like their balcony upstairs, and he walks in the room, and then she freaks out, and Josh is like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" She's like, "We need to leave this house." He's like, "All right, we'll leave the house." So that's their yeah. So a lot of shit goes down before they leave, and I love how like they subvert the expectation of leave the house and all be good, But we find out in the iconic line from Elise Adventure that the house is not haunted, Dalton is. So I just love how they subvert if you leave the house, you're free, but they can't escape it. So no matter where they go, they're kind of doomed.
I think one of the strong points of this movie is the pacing. I think they don't waste any time. Kind of the first half of the movie picks up pretty steadily because, again, it's pretty cliche that it gets worse and worse and worse, but I think it's a pretty good pace in terms of like the hauntings getting more intense.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to wait too long. So I actually like that.
No, not at all.
The first half
You
of
have
the
to
movie.
wait at all.
Yeah. They're kind of hinted at from the beginning, you're right. Because some movies are like a straight up, like, there's no horror at all the first like 20 minutes or so, and you're like, okay, like let's get a little taste of something. But this movie definitely throws in those little like jump scares and stuff for you. So cool.
One more thing.
Yeah, Jackie, how do you feel about that sequence with the whole house alarm, that whole set piece with the house alarm and the jump scare and all that?
Yeah, that was what I was gonna add into it. I wrote in my notes, I really like this part because it makes absolutely no sense at first, but then it comes into play later.
Yes.
I really do like this scene because it shows how real, like, to the audience. I mean, I feel like obviously we know now, like, we've been known, like, through the beginning that it's real. Too. But yeah, I think it shows to Josh, like, all right, how is she going to make that up? Like, your door just, like, swung open. I like it in the moment in those reasons. And it's, like, paranormal, but not at the same time, because he's walking around with the bat and, like, you don't know, in his mind, like, you don't know if it's a real person. So I like that piece of it. It's not just, like, things falling. And I like how it doesn't come into play until the second movie.
Yes. Oh my
so
God,
that's kind of like,
back to that.
Yeah, it's kind of like hidden. So I kind of like that they like dragged that out. They didn't. Nolan said that, well, they over-explained it. I don't think so, because if they over-explained it, they would have added that in the first movie. So I like how they link that piece. So, because it kind of like does not. It just makes it make a lot more sense because you don't see any ghosts come through the door.
And also smart because I think they don't tell us anything in the first one, and it goes into how Josh, even though he's like kind of like, oh shit, like Renee, maybe she's not crazy, he still kind of wants to push it aside because he's in denial and he doesn't want to go through what he went through as a kid because he's obviously just starting to come back to him. So he's still almost in denial because he doesn't want to go through any more traumatic experiences. So it's very smart how they keep that from us because we're almost in his viewpoint in that scene because we're like, what's going on? And he doesn't want to admit what's going on. So I think it's it's awesome how they do it like that. Because you do relate to him at a certain point in the movie. Like I do, at least. Like I feel for him.
I can't believe after that whole scene. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm thinking now, like, I can't believe after that whole scene, though, he's still like, nah, it's not paranormal. Like, it's
he doesn't want to admit it to himself.
You guys are crazy.
Yeah.
He agrees to move, though. He does agree to move. Like, he gives her that. He
does.
Just to defend myself real quick, you said that, like, I was saying that they explain too much. It's not necessarily that.
I think she's referring to part 2, though.
I know. I just wanted to make a comment on that. We're obviously going to get into part 2 later on in this podcast, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But I think it plays into franchises and how you have to, like, treat a franchise. I like how part 2 intertwines part 1 and how connected they are, and it makes everything make sense. But in a way, it's like you have to ride that line because there are things that happen in part 2 that when you watch part 1 afterwards, it's not scary anymore. A lot of the scary moments from part 1 you find out were just not scary in part 2. I'm trying not to ruin part 2, but do you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like you kind of have to ride that line of intertwining the movies, but no, like seeing part 2 when you go back and see part 1, it like makes it a little less intense because you know what's going on now, and it's not necessarily like the demons.
I think it's a mindfuck, and I love it.
Yeah, I don't feel the same way.
I know what
'Cause I
you're
think
saying, though.
it's
I know what you're saying.
yeah. 'Cause I feel like
Because
it's still
obviously
a
the
good.
person who did the banging on the door, we find out, wasn't a demon. We won't get
Yeah,
into it, but
exactly.
right. But I love it because I'm all for the emotional arc. My trilogy emotional arcs. I like that
Yeah.
shit.
No, and I do like it too as a general, just in general, because it does add another layer to that movie that you wouldn't get without part two. So I do like the complexity of that. It's just sometimes maybe it's me. I'm not even saying that they went too far, but maybe they did.
Well,
And
just
that's
like
why
you
kind
said,
of I
it'll
don't.
have a different effect on you, unless you can watch part one on its own. It's gonna have a different effect on you as part of the 1-2 punch of part one and two. That's
Mm,
all.
yeah. Okay.
So pretty much, we're gonna they get into the new house now. They move,
Mm-hmm.
and this is when we get the iconic
This is where we
song
meet
of
the
the
mom.
franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see her, we meet her. This is when she
Or the
mentions the whole
grandma,
like, oh my
whatever.
god, the picture. Yeah, the grandma. She mentions the whole, oh my god, Josh stood still for a picture, and she has that weird. And she I love the line. I don't remember the specifics. I'm sorry. I watched the movie, but I don't remember. But when she talks to Renee, she's like, pretty much like, do whatever you have to do to protect your family. She has some sort of dialogue like that with Lorraine that I really like. She's like, don't feel crazy. Do whatever you need to do to protect, your family. And she doesn't want to say everything because she doesn't want Josh to remember. She doesn't know that Josh is starting to break a little bit, and she doesn't want her son to remember what happened. I just really like that exchange between her and Lorraine, her and Renee. I don't know. It was very interesting, and I like their dialogue. But this is when we get, of course, Renee's home alone again. Josh is working. The grandma's not there. We get the iconic tiptoe through the tulips scene. It's
Mhm.
so that song's associated with this franchise for life now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Love that scene when she's bringing out the garbage and she glances back and she sees like a little kid dancing to tiptoe the tulips.
Yeah.
So good, so good. I love this sequence so
I don't
much.
know if
It's
you
like she's
remember.
chasing him through the house.
I was explaining it to Jackie. I don't know if you remember that song when this movie came out. People talking about that song. I don't think it was officially part of the them promoting the movie, but it got
Not the
out
first one.
it got out that it was like a haunted song because the guy who sung it like died while he was performing it. I actually watched like a documentary on Tiny Tim. That's the singer songwriter, and it's like half true. He was performing that song and he had a heart attack and then he died like in the hospital later on. But actually, really sad story when you read into it. But I don't know if you remember that. Am I just making that up or was that like a
Oh, it was
urban
some weird
legend
thing.
that yeah?
And
So
I
it
mean, I
like
don't judge people, but he looked like a fucking creepy tiptoe through the tulips motherfucker.
oh Tiny Tim, yeah, he's
Yeah.
creepy looking. I know. Yeah. Yeah, he's
It
kind of
so
has that.
fits so well with this franchise.
Because, and again, I associate this song with SpongeBob because I grew up on
Oh, really?
SpongeBob
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that
I mean, so
episode
yeah.
of SpongeBob. So every time I hear that song, it first
Oh,
goes
so
to SpongeBob and then Insidious.
okay.
So, but yeah, the fact that it's so tied to Insidious now, when you like look at the singer,
Yeah.
like you can't help but think he's
Yeah.
like a demon from the further or something.
Yeah, but you're right. They didn't use because they didn't know how much of an effect that had on the audience with the first one, but they
Mhm.
used that to promote every sequel. That song, like
Okay.
every sequel that
Oh,
comes
so
out,
that
they
wasn't
use.
even
Yeah.
in the trailers for the first one.
It was not used as anything for promotion for the first one. It was just part of the
Wow.
movie. And then they were like,
Okay.
"Holy shit! Like we got an iconic, song tied to
Yeah.
the franchise now. Let's use every trailer, like every sequel that comes out, they like blast that shit."
Oh yeah. That's funny.
But I love that scene. How do you with the little boy? She like walks past, and you can. They don't show like they don't focus on it. It's not. You just see someone like against the wall, like half
Yeah.
against the wall, and then she goes to take the garbage out. She turns around, he's like dancing to it, and then she's like,
It's
"What
so
the
cute.
fuck?"
I love it. It's so cute. I like look for it every time now.
And I love the fake pop out where like you think you see the shoes like in the closet and she opens it, but then he pops out from the cabinet above. I'm like, oh, it's so good. So
Mhm.
good.
It's so
It's so
cute.
good.
When it happened, I was like, all right, best scene of all time.
It's so good. Poor Renee
just so
is getting so
cute.
traumatized by all these ghosts.
These ghosts are so really props to whoever I guess was the costume designer and did the
Right?
makeup
And the
because
makeup. Yeah, the
all of
effect,
these
yeah.
ghosts are so defined and so like interesting. I almost want like a spin-off series that like goes into all these different ghosts and like their past lives, because
Right.
they definitely hook you with their look. They're not just like generic run of the mill ghosts. They all have like unique look, especially when we get to the end of the movie, when we get into the further, and we have the family with the shotgun and stuff. They're all like super unique and super interesting, so you kind of want to know more about them.
You're so right, because there's such a variety of the ghosts. Like if they don't make it simple. They don't like, okay, every ghost looks the same. There's so many different characters in the further, which is makes sense, because in real life we're all different. These are dead souls.
And I think that's where the sequels, I could critique the sequels a little bit. They kind of get a little cookie cutter in the sequels.
Okay.
I feel like they don't really pay attention to that as much as they did in the first one. But I definitely appreciate that in the first one.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% about the uniqueness to the ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really do that in the third one.
The third one's a very personal story about like a mom and her daughter, which we'll get to that movie eventually, but I love it. Yeah, I love this sequence, Tiny Tim. So this is when after this, Josh's mom, she arrives and she explains that this is when she says that she had a nightmare about a demon with a red face in Dalton's room. We get another. I mean, I keep saying we get another iconic scene, but this is pretty much the iconic jump scene of the movie.
Before we jump to that scene, we skipped another good scene.
Oh yeah. Tell me.
Of Pat. So she had that with that kid ghost, and then she invites a priest over.
To bless the house.
And Josh comes in and was like, "Oh, what is this? Like a line to a joke or something?" And he thinks he's so funny. And then his mom comes out of nowhere. I don't know why I thought that was so funny.
I know, we gotta.
I kind of be like, dude, like, what are you having a priest in my house for too? I kind of give you. I'm on a side with that.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what he says. He says, isn't this supposed to be the punchline of a joke? A guy comes home to a priest in his house with his wife. Yeah, and I was like, oh jeez, Josh.
But then, like, Josh. There was like nothing else to it. Like the priest just left, and then the mom's like, "Yeah, I'm here to help."
I said this to Jackie too, like, because he talks about it after the fact. He goes to Renee. He's like, "Why do you have a priest? Like, you don't go to church. Like, you're not a religious person." And it made me think, like, when this stuff happens, can you just like call up your local church and they'll send a priest? Like, how does that work? Do they have like a hotline?
She's seeing this shit. She's like, we gotta get. We're gonna be Catholic now. We're gonna get into the religion now after all this shit.
But do they just have like priests on standby that'll just like make house calls? It's so funny.
She probably went in like the yellow pages from like a rip-off scam artist trying to.
I almost googled it, but I kind of don't want to.
Yeah, I know. There is moments like good that you brought that up, because there is moments of levity and comic relief, especially when we get to Specs and Tucker. So I like that they have a little break from the tension.
Yeah.
At certain points.
I feel like that's a piece of that I do like, because Conjuring doesn't have that much, right?
They have a little bit here and there, but not like these characters.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I like.
It's almost more forced and like cheesy a little bit in The Conjuring when they do it, in my opinion.
Yeah,
not the first one, but the spin-offs.
Oh yeah, because I'm trying to remember the first one. That is another one of my favorites. Just been a bit.
First one's pretty straightforward. For the most part.
Yeah, that's what I like about this. I do like the comic relief, just because I like comedy. It's not like I need it like for the movie, but I think it's a good piece.
It's done right.
Yeah, it has to be done right.
So pretty much this is when Lorraine steps up and she says, I had a nightmare. And I love this scene when she saw a demon standing above Dalton's bed, like in the corner. And the way they shoot it, like, again, they don't focus on the demon. They just see something in the corner, and he like puts out his hand. She's like, I asked it what it wanted, and it like its creepy hands like point to Dalton. It's so good, so good. And then she's like, I'll never forget that face. And then she sees the face, it's the lipstick, the red dude pops up behind Josh. I love that. That's another good scare. Iconic shot right there. Pop-up jump scare.
I would say that's probably the most iconic shot, like single frame of the movie. Everyone
that wasn't all the promotion. They ruined it. That wasn't all the promotion.
Yeah. Again, I hate to bash it, but like I remember seeing it in theaters too. And maybe this is why I think it's a little overrated, because people like freaked out at that shot and were like, it was a super jump scare. I didn't really feel the same way. I think it's a cool
really?
shot, but it really doesn't hit me like it hit other people, especially now because you've seen it so many times. But I
Well,
guess it's not fair to
course.
judge it now. But even the first time I saw it, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a cool shot," and everyone around me was like, "Oh my god," So maybe that's part of the
Love it.
reason why I'm a little jaded toward this movie, and then how much people love it.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I realize I'm in the minority when I say I don't
Yeah.
love this movie. Like most people consider this borderline all timer for them.
Yeah,
So
it's all timers.
yeah.
Jackie, what do you like this jump scare? You like this shot?
I feel like it's fun. I just can't get over that they had to make this guy look like Darth Maul.
Oh,
I
see, I don't even
know.
think about that. I don't
I
think
know.
people
Well,
Yeah,
think
I
about
like
that.
I
yeah.
can't I feel
It's
like
yeah.
I've heard that critique before, but to me, it doesn't.
It's a little too and I don't want to the only thing I'll say about the newest movie, Ant, without spoiling it, I don't think
Oh,
you'll be
okay,
mad
yeah,
at
yeah.
me, is the design of, because he comes back. I think we know that
Well,
from
yeah.
the trailers.
Well, that's in the trailer.
The
Yeah.
design in this new movie for him is much better. He looks
Okay, that's good to
way
know.
better because he is a little overdone with the makeup and stuff. He's a little
Okay.
too clownish for me.
What about when you get to the climax when Josh goes into the? I know we're skipping, but I think he looks cool when he's doing that shit, like it's almost sewing. I think that's like he looks
Yeah.
better in that sequence than this one.
I
wish
agree.
that was the first.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I feel like I wish that was the first shot we saw him.
Like they
Mm.
held off on showing his face.
Yeah,
maybe
because
in that
I
scene?
do
Okay.
like that scare. I like the piece because I think Nolan, you kept saying it, like them not fully showing him. I feel like
Right.
that being his reveal would have been
Okay.
a little
I probably
better.
agree because I do like that shot and I do like his overall design. I'm not saying the overall design is bad. I just think the face in particular was a little too overdone.
Well, that's
But,
good.
I wish
to
it
know
happened
that's
at
a
night
slight-
or
that they
something.
improved. That's
I
good
feel like
to
I
know.
wish it
it's
happened-
improved. Yeah, it's. I think Jackie agrees with me. In this new one, he looks really fucking cool and he looks creepy in this
I'm
new one.
excited.
Yeah.
Very excited.
I feel like it would have been better at night.
Oh, I actually agree with that. That's a good
Okay.
point. It's a daytime scene, and I think it does take away a little bit of the eeriness when you see him in broad
Mhm.
daylight.
Yeah, because I feel
agree.
like it's like way too
Mhm.
bright
I agree
for what they were
100%,
trying
actually.
to do.
And there
I
was
would keep
it was in the day and there was no build up in terms of the scene itself. Like I know there was build up because she was talking about her experience.
Right, she's
and
just
stuff.
telling us her nightmare.
Telling a story. So it was so out of nowhere, and that's what made it iconic when you first saw
Right.
it, because it was like, oh my god, out of nowhere. But looking back on it, it's like you almost don't have time to process it, and then all of a sudden it's gone, and you're like, holy shit, what did I just see? So yeah, to your point, I think it would have been a little bit creepier if it was at nighttime, maybe, and you had more shadows, and you just kind of maybe saw half his face or something. Yeah, that would have been.
Or even
that
if she
would've been
just
creepy.
heard the crackling and you didn't do a jump scare right there, like you just heard something, like she heard something and looked up and didn't see
Mhm.
anything, that might have been more suspenseful.
Yeah,
maybe.
because it is so iconic. So I'm
Well,
not saying
yeah,
to
for
take
me,
it
it's
completely
like-
out.
right.
I'm glad they have it in there. I just I think I agree with you, Jackie, that it could have been done a little bit better in a different setting.
Yeah, I agree definitely that it should be nighttime. 100%.
What do you think of that, Anthony? Do you think that they should have held out on showing him, like Jackie thinks? What do you think of that?
It's a catch 2020 because I think maybe, because I love that jump scare, but maybe
Mhm.
placement wise they could have pushed it back.
Mhm.
Because I wouldn't have wanted the first time to be in the further because that's all about Josh and Dalton escaping him. So I get why I like the
Yeah.
way the scene is as is.
Yeah, it's true.
But maybe when Lorraine's telling the story about the nightmare, how you don't see him in focus when he's next to the bed. Maybe if they kept him not they didn't show him super in focus in that moment, that might have been better.
Yeah, because he's so in focus in that shot, you don't
Right.
really know what you're looking at because you don't
Right.
really
You
know
just,
who he
pretty
is
much
yet.
just open his mouth and does that thing, right? That's
Yeah.
pretty much, yeah.
I think if you
No,
would have
I
gotten
agree.
the sewing scene,
Yeah.
maybe you would have connected it better, and when you did see him, it would have scared you more.
I would have maybe
Not
kept
sure.
him not maybe a little blurred out, but still see that something was behind Josh, maybe not
Yeah.
show the full face.
Yeah, I just feel like
Maybe.
it's way
Maybe.
too clear.
Yeah, that's what I would would have done. But I'm
That piece
nitpicking.
was a little cheesy to me. I mean,
Yeah.
pieces in this movie.
But I love the campiness a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Of the movie, because it is a fun, it's like you're getting on a ride pretty much, this movie. I mean, once you go into it further. But that's when she sees, after that, they see his bedroom's ransacked, and like destroyed. And that's when Lorraine's like, oh, we're going to fucking call Elise. We're going to call this psychic and our paranormal investigators. This is when we get introduced to the iconic Elise.
The
Shay,
queen.
the queen of, well, yeah, she is the queen. She's a badass. So this is when she explains that Dalton's not in a coma. And this is when we, like Nolan, you briefly mentioned earlier, he has the ability to astral project his consciousness when he's sleeping, and I think that's such a unique spin with the supernatural genre because it's so cool.
Yeah.
So like he thought that he was dreaming, but he literally like left his body, and I love like, well, we'll get to that. I don't want to talk about that scene yet, but I get there's an emotional scene when Josh finally comes to the realization of what he has to do. And I just love when he goes to look at the artwork on the walls and the writing that Dalton wrote, like, I left my body and I could see my body. Like, and it was just so cute and emotional for Josh, but I love that scene. But yeah, so we find out that he has the ability to astral project and he's trapped in the further, and all these demons are trying to get his body because they want to escape the further. And I love I love a movie when you name drop a title in the movie, you get extra brownie points for me too. And she's like, they have a more insidious agenda. I'm like, yeah, they do, girl. Yeah, they do.
You right.
But yeah, Lisa's a badass. This is when we get introduced to Specs and Tucker. And again, at first, Josh,
Remember,
he wants
Specs
no
and
part of
Tucker
this.
come first.
Yeah, because she gets her own. Of course, she does. She gets her grand entrance by herself. They kind of like are setting up shit.
No, she wanted to she what's the word?
I think she
Monitor,
just wants
like,
to see.
wants to make
What's his
sure
name?
that it's real before
Right,
she comes
right,
in. So
right.
they were like, yeah, it's not wiring. And I love when she comes in, she's like, yeah, no, this is not wiring. You're good.
She's like, no, not necessary.
She's like, you're good.
But
Yeah, so we
she
get that.
explains that. Yeah, she
Yeah, we get
explains all
that whole
this, and
thing,
Josh is
and
like, nope.
then Josh is not buying it. He's like, pretty much, get the fuck. This is
But I think it's not
disrespectful.
because he's I don't think it's because he's. I almost think it's because again, he's like, fuck, like I'm like this. I went through this before, but he doesn't know it, but he does. I
Really?
think he knows it, yeah, but he doesn't.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, because you can see
Okay.
it in his eyes, like he's telling them, "Sorry, we're leaving," but you can tell he almost is like wants them to stay, but doesn't want to admit it. That's the vibe I got from his acting.
You've been saying this kind of since the beginning, so you believe that it's more of Josh is kind of breaking down those walls throughout the movie.
Yeah, yeah,
I never got that, so that's interesting because
okay.
I think that he's in total shock when his mom reveals what happened to him. I think he's
I
pretty
agree.
like surprised. So I don't think that it's.
But he even puts her down too. He's like, no, I don't want any of this, mom. No.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah. So
he's in denial.
I know you're saying it's more subconscious, but I don't know. I think he that hypnosis that they did as a kid on him really worked because I don't think he was thinking of that at all.
Oh, it definitely worked, but I think after
the,
all these years later, like, and after what's happening to his kid, it's almost starting to, revert on with him too.
Yeah, no, I don't agree. I don't think so.
Though, not completely.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to push back and say I don't think so.
Okay,
because I think it's so effective when his mom tells him the truth, and he's like his whole world is flipped upside down. I think I like that version a little better. So
he doesn't end up believing fully though until he goes into Dalton's room and he sees it for himself, like all the pictures, and like he's like, damn, why didn't I not? I used to do this.
Yeah.
That's when he's like, that's my favorite Josh moment when he actually like kind of breaks down. He goes back to Renee. He's like, all right, get Elise back here, girl. I love that moment. It's a touching moment. It gets me every time.
But I feel like it's a little plot hole that like after his room is literally ransacked with like blood, and he's still like, yeah, nah. This isn't paranormal.
That's where I think that's where I think the point comes to me, where I'm like, he knows it's real, but he's not admitting it. That's where I think that I get a point of where my point comes into play.
I never thought about it like that.
It's fascinating. This movie's fascinating.
I think it's just any way you want to interpret it. I think their lives are fucking crazy, so they're just processing it in different ways. So
Well, definitely
Yeah.
the Josh and Renee are, because I mean, poor
Yeah.
Renee is like thrown in. She's like, "What the fuck what'd you bring into my family?"
Well, yeah. Poor Renee, she's in the thick of it. I mean, she's
Right,
experienced pretty much all of it since the
right,
beginning.
exactly.
So,
So
yeah.
he does agree after that scene when after he goes into Dalton's room. He's like, "All right, let's bring Elise back," and this is when they start to do their cool shit. And we really get into almost the climax of it. She has that like cool mask thing, that contraption that she puts on her head. I
Yes.
love
So creepy.
it. I'm
If I
like,
was
what do you?
sitting
I
there,
would be
I'd be
so
like, oh, this
claustrophobic.
is,
I
yeah,
would have a heart attack in that thing. I'm telling you that right now.
I know.
I love that scene when she's like, when they do like, I guess I would call it a seance. I don't know, Jackie, what I would say when she's like writing down shit and you see like the
Hmm.
bitch, and she's like drawing something, going crazy, and it almost like looks like she dies in the thing. She like passes out, and she's like, it's such a good
Mhm.
sequence. I love it.
Can we just talk about like the iconic Elise? Because what do you
Yeah.
think really like? Why do you think she resonated so much? I guess it's just a credit to Lynn Shay, the actress. I mean, the way she commands her scenes, and when she's going around the house, like her demeanor, like I think the fact that she has Specs and Tucker with her too, that whole dynamic, how she's like their mother figure and she's like in
She's,
charge and like so
she's a
bossy.
badass. You're right.
She's
She's a
just
badass bitch.
badass. Yeah, exactly.
But
Like bossy in a
you
good
said it
way.
perfectly. But
Yeah.
she takes control of her room when she's in it because she
Uh
knows what she's doing.
Hmm.
So I think that's what
Hmm.
kind of like got me. I'm like, all right, let her do her thing, people. Like, let her get to her work. So I
yeah.
don't know. I just fell in love with her because she was like, but she has that moment. She's just like, I don't want to be here because you don't. I just want to be here to help. She just wants to help, but she
Uh
wants to get it done the right way.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I just kind of like connected with her too because she just wants to do right for this family
because
who's been
usually
suffering all these
in
years.
this subgenre of paranormal horror, you always get this, right? They call a priest or they call a
Right.
medium or they call an expert to try and like cleanse the house or cleanse the demon. And most of the time they're just like cookie cutter, you're not really memorable, but for some reason, man, Elise just steals the show. Like like you're in good hands. Like she knows what the fuck she's doing. So I
She's
just
the best. She's this best kind of character since Tangina, and I mean this is literally an homage to Poltergeist. This is like the best version of that since
yeah.
Poltergeist.
Yeah,
This
no, I
house
didn't even
is
think of that.
clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this whole movie is a homage to Poltergeist.
Why
But
do
yeah,
you love
she's one of the.
Elise, Jackie?
I was gonna
She's
say
your girl. Yeah.
she is my girl. I love that they did the third and fourth one because, not giving anything away,
Well, her
but
right
if you
backstory.
look up the synopsis, it is to bring her back. And I think it is her acting. I love the character, but I'm thinking of her in another movie, Ouija, and
Oh,
I absolutely loved her in that too, and I was so happy to see her. And I really think it's the actor too, just like warms my heart. Like my little grandma, like is just so badass, and like she owns the room. Like she really, yes, I do love Patrick Wilson a lot, but I feel like she's the reason I love this series, and I'm glad because I feel like it can get annoying when they keep bringing someone back, but I feel like it was needed. Like she was just such a good character that
I'm a
I
sucker
think
for a recurring character, so I love
yeah, like I feel like I'm trying to think of another movie that it's like, all right, like calm down. But I just feel like with her, like it makes
well, she's the
total
expert,
sense.
so yeah.
Yeah, she's just,
She's
sh-
heartwarming too. Like you just want to, again, she's another person you just want to like hang out with and give her a hug.
yeah, I feel like I would want her to be my median. Like if I ever
Yeah,
saw a
exactly.
median,
You
like
want
I
her in
would
your
want
team.
it to be
If you're
her.
having haunted
Yeah,
house shit, call Elise.
exactly.
Yeah. That cool. So now we get into where shit hits the fan.
Like the seance goes
You
bad.
think you think she dies pretty much. I mean, she like is having a seizure and then just like is unresponsive for a couple minutes. And then is this when
So they drop
we
everything
see
on they
Dalton?
drop everything on Josh though. Like this is when she like drops like I helped you when you were a kid. I suppressed
Okay.
your memory. This is when she drops everything on him. Like he finds the whole truth out.
Okay,
And
okay.
Mm-hmm.
she
Yep.
pretty much tells him the only way you need to get your son. You need because you're the only one with disability. So that's when they kind of come up with the game plan. Josh is kind of like, oh fuck, but he's game because it's his kid.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's when they kind of come up with a game plan of what to do. And I love how that gets Josh like involved in the action. Right, setting up everything.
Yeah, third act Josh is definitely redeeming himself. This is where you start to like
Mm-hmm.
definitely, feel that he's a good character because he's no questions asked. I'm going to save my son,
Right.
whatever it takes. Like, let's do it. So definitely kudos
And
to
it's
him.
scary because you never know, he might not come back. You
Don't know.
don't
You don't know.
know. So this one pretty much want to just get into it. She puts him in like the hypnotic trance to like get him going, and I love the first shot. He's like, "I don't think this isn't working," and he's like walking around
Mhm.
like, "God, you didn't get it fixed." And he turns around, he sees himself in the couch. I'm like, "Oh, I love." It's
Yeah.
so cool to see that shot. He's like, "Oh fuck, here we go, man. Here we go."
Yeah.
So
And
good.
do we see Dalton before this? Do we see him chained up or not really?
No, we don't see him chained up until Josh sees him chained up in the
Okay.
further. The only
So this
Dalton we see
is
is like, oh no, we did when the seance went bad. Dalton like is standing behind Elise, but like it's not Dalton. It's the red guy
mhm,
controlling him. That's the only
yeah.
other time we really see Dalton out of bed.
Yes. Yeah, that was a cool scene too. I like that shot.
Wait, I forgot to mention one of my favorite lines of the movie.
Oh yes, I love a good line. Say it.
So I feel like they kind of did disservice to the little brother. Maybe they could have used him more, but I love the part where he's like scared he's like, I'm scared. And she's like, oh, it's okay. He's like, well, I don't like when he walks around at night. And then they
So
just cut
creepy.
it.
So
I don't
creepy.
know why the way he delivers it. I love that line so much.
It's so
And it
scary,
gets
that
me
line,
every time. It still gets me. And I'm like, oh,
because
Yeah,
Renee's like, "What
he
do you
has to
mean?"
sleep in a different room. He said, "Can I sleep
Right.
somewhere else in the house? Because I
yeah.
don't like when he walks
Because
around
his
at night."
door is
Yeah,
cracked, he can see Dalton's room like
right
a
across the
straight
hall.
sight to Dalton.
Yeah,
And when he says that, I'm like, oh my god, he's
it
getting up,
is
walking around like,
creepy.
fuck that
I
shit,
wouldn't
man.
be able to
Fuck
sleep.
that
I would have my
shit.
door closed, man.
I would be like,
That's
Mom, I'm staying
creepy.
over at my friend's house. I'm sorry, fuck this.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
the
out.
loud ass fucking beeping from the machine he probably hears too.
Yeah.
The beep beep, like that's creepy.
He's hearing that. That's loud.
But imagine waking up to like your like comatose brother like just leaving your room, like walking when he's not supposed to. I'm like, oh my god, that's scary. So
Yeah,
scary. That's a great line, Jackie. That was really good. But this is when Josh starts walking through the further, and this is when you really get fun. I love the further so much with the
yeah.
smoke and
Mm-hmm.
everything. This is when you get you were talked about a little bit, that family with like the creepy girl with the shotgun, and she's like smiling really creepy. And that's like the first kind of like characters he interacts with. So cool.
Do you think that
Um,
was like a previous family that lived in the
yeah,
house? That's kind of what I thought.
I don't know about if it's in the same house,
Okay.
but I know I don't know. It's hard to tell because so many different things are in the further. But I
Yeah.
do love that he has to go through the house, like the first house in the further, because that's such a cool layout, that house.
I know it is. I do love that first house.
So good, so freaking good. But he does find Dalton eventually. But like Nolan said, Dalton's chained up. Um, and this is when we get the glimpse of we go back to the tiptoe through the tulips, and the demon's doing his thing, sewing and
His
getting ready
lair.
to go. Yeah, it's such a cool layer.
Yeah.
It's like very like Freddy Krueger-esque a little bit.
Jackie, you
Mm.
said, why does he get like his own lair and nobody else gets like place to call
Yeah,
home?
they like the other
Red
family.
faced demon, man.
Yeah, because like the other family is just like there on the couch, and then he gets this like special, like workshop horse there thing.
But it's so cool because there's such a sense of urgency, because while Dalton and Josh are in there trying to escape now, the spirits are entering the real world and they're coming into the actual house, and like Renee's like, holy fucking shit. Specs and Tucker like seeing shit walk around the house, they're trying to get to them. So it's so cool. Like you're like, Josh, you gotta get going. And I love how Elise
Mm-hmm.
coaches Renee to like speak to Josh and like follow my voice, follow my voice. Like, Elise again is being a boss and like telling Renee, like, you gotta do this if you want your kid and your husband back.
Mhm.
So I love that little, and they have I love a good chase scene, and the red faced demon literally chases Josh and Dalton through the house to get back. I love it.
I do love the suspense and the buildup and the intensity of this sequence, but if I had to critique it, I do like that concept, Ant, of how all the demons are coming into the real world around the house. I wish they would have kind of had that as a bit of a break in the action and had more like, you know me, I love a good stalking scene or something. I wish they could have extended that more and had them going through the house.
Slow it down for a minute.
Slow it down a minute and had it be a little bit creepy. But they kind of just like threw it in there in between the further scenes. And it was kind of all like, meant to make your heart pumping, which it definitely succeeded. But I think it would have been cooler if they kind of had it as like a slower buildup of them each splitting up and going through the house and, kind of seeing the ghosts pop out, but it kind of happened all at once, so kind of a lot to process all at once.
I think it can work either way, but I get your point. I think they probably, I would see them in the editing room saying, we kind of did that a little bit in the first half with Renee walking through the house. Let's maybe speed it up, like get shit, pedal.
No, yeah, I get it.
But I get both ways.
Yeah, they definitely executed what they intended. But you know me, I love a good like slow build up, like creepy scene.
Yeah, if you do. But so the red demon, he attacks them, and Josh and Dalton get separated. So Dalton keeps running, but this is important because when Josh starts to make his way back, he's confronted by the old woman, the Black Bride.
No,
we find out, right? Yeah,
No, the red guy doesn't separate them. Josh, like he's because they were holding hands or whatever, and then Josh was like tired and he's like, I'll catch up. And
he says keep going.
Yeah, he keeps going. He's like huffing and puffing, and then they show him yelling at the and then the red, because you'll understand
because the red demon's chasing ends up catching up to Dawn because he's like climbing on the fucking wall
in the room. Yes.
Oh yeah, that's cool. But yeah, Josh runs into the Black Bride, and it's a pretty interesting scene because she's just there, like just smiling and smirking and like laughing and taunting him. He's like, "What do you?" Pretty much like, "What do you want? Like, leave me alone." Blah blah blah. And it almost seems like because she kind of like goes backwards. It almost looks like he overcame that fear and he's done with her. But unfortunately, that's really not he didn't overcome his fear. That's not what happens. But eventually,
he was too caught up trying to scare her off that she was able to slip by him.
Right. Yep. So eventually, they wake up pretty much. Josh and Dalton wake up. We see that Dalton's breathing, and finally some relief from my girl Renee. She's like, "Oh my god, my kid's back." I love the line when she's like, "I'm never letting you." He's like, "I'm tired." She's like, "You're never falling asleep again, bitch." I love that line.
Yeah.
But the spirits vanish. Cue horror, happy ending, pretty much vibes. Everyone's happy, celebrating. At least everyone's smiling. Cause for celebration. But this is what makes the movie for me. This next fucking sequence, it's so damn good. So we cut back and, they're pretty much, I would say, cleaning up. Dalton's scarfing down food because he hasn't eaten in forever. But Josh goes to Elise and like pretty much thanks her. And I forget if he does. I don't know what causes her to snap the photo. He hands her the picture. She hands him a picture or something, right? Mm-hmm. And she notices his fingers.
His hand, it looks like is like white.
So she but she doesn't play it off. I mean, I'm like, girl, like you're good. You got to be a better actor. She kind of like gets that look on her face right away. She's like, oh,
yeah.
Fuck. But then she like turns her and she like doesn't even hide. She just fucking snaps that picture. Like... He's like, I told you I don't like pictures. Rah, rah, rah. And then I love when he just grabs her. His like back like starts cracking, and you're like, oh fuck, this isn't Josh. This is not Josh. And
he was yelling. And that house is small, like, and then they show them in the kitchen, and like they barely hear him. I'm like, there's no way, like he
Lorraine
was yelling.
And Renee. Lorraine's the one who's kind of like the grandma. She like what? And then Renee's like, oh shit. And then thankfully Renee's the one who goes. But again, I love the score in this moment. And she's like searching the house. She gets the flashlight looking for them. And then she finds Elise, your girl Elise. She finds her dead body. So our girl's killed. I thought that was ballsy. I love this choice so much that she gets
I know,
killed.
I really do. And my note was the twist fucks me up each time. But why did
That's
Elise?
Ineffective.
I said, but why did Elise have to pay the price? Crying face. I
That's what
just
makes it
really
so
love
good,
her.
though. That's what
I
Especially
know.
because it's not even like she like did it saving them. She just, got right at the end after they
Yeah,
were
I
already
know.
safe, or at least after the son was safe. But yeah, it's like, dude,
I just
I
love
wonder
it.
if they regret that in a way,
I
because
wouldn't.
it
It's
is
one of
such a
my
good
favorite
ending. But
endings. It's one of my
It
favorite
is a good
endings.
ending.
it
They're
is,
lucky
it
they have the
is. She
further
gets
because
it
she
so
can exist
easily
in the
though.
further. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
not. I
like
mean, she's a
maybe they would
big
have
dude
changed it and had her
choking her.
like have like a final line or something before she passed, but she's just dead, straight up dead, like no
Oh yeah,
warning
that's why I love
at
it. It's
all.
so mean. It's so mean, but I love.
Yeah.
But I love when Renee sees it. Again, Rose Byrne, like her acting, her reactions are so good, and then
Mhm.
she grabs the camera because the camera's there, and we see when she's going through, she looks up and she sees the Black Bride, and then Josh grabs her shoulder. He's like, "It's okay," and then she just turns around and she does the, and then it goes Insidious. So good. I love the ending. It's perfect. It's such a good ending. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So that's Insidious.
Hmm.
Such a good title too. I mean, let's talk about that. It's a great title.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before on the podcast.
Yeah,
How effective the title is.
simple and
Just one
effective.
word. And I think didn't you bring it up that it kind of brought on those types of like one word titles
Yep.
after this came
Yep.
out, the success of this
Like
movie. So
Sinister, blah blah blah, all that
yeah,
shit. Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan.
Cool. Any well, that's the movie. Any final thoughts? Anything else you guys want to say about the movie that you didn't get to say during the review? Like overall feelings or whatever before we get into our moments in our review?
Jackie, you're up.
I think I said it all.
What did you think about like that whole final climax, Jackie, and then the final ending? Like as a whole.
I did like it a lot. I mean, I feel like I agree that they could have expanded a little more on the, you know, I guess the women. I feel like it was mostly women trying to get there. But they did do a cool scene with the hand coming out of a specs. I think that was a cool piece. Yeah, I mean, I really wish they didn't do this to Elise, but I don't see the movie going any other way because I feel like it's what makes the movie. And
I
obviously
agree.
brings us to number 2, but I feel
Right.
like it wouldn't, not that it wouldn't have been as good, but I just feel like it wouldn't have stuck with me. Right?
Right. Like
I guess it
everyone
wouldn't.
leaves the theater like talking about the ending the first time you
Yeah, I
watch it.
just
Like,
feel
oh
like it
fuck.
just really makes like the movie's overall good. Like it's a good movie. But I feel like that just really wraps it up where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
nope, this is not
Big
a
gut
happy
punch.
ending. Like, yeah, like it just really like
Yeah.
is a good way to end it. Like I don't know.
I think it's especially effective because this is in a way a gateway horror, PG-13 horror. You don't really see that a lot with PG-13 horror like this. You usually get the happy
Mhm.
ending. So for them to
Yeah.
go that route and not only kill
Love
Elise,
it.
but that Josh is still in the further, like that's pretty fucked. That's yeah. So
Yeah.
I remember
It's
the
sad because the thing that he didn't want to happen happened to him.
mhm.
What they were trying to
So,
prevent the whole
yeah,
time.
exactly. Since he was a little kid, it happened.
Yeah, I just feel like it definitely wraps up not wraps up, but like continues and it just
And
it's
it's
a
a cool
twist
cliffhanger
because
too,
you're
because you're
like,
like, if it does good,
yeah,
we're gonna get more.
yeah, and it was just a good twist of like, how the heck, it seems like that lady went away and Josh was in the body and,
Right.
that type of thing. I just feel like it does shock, at least, is a badass. They could have made her a little more like, but then she probably wouldn't have ended up dead. So they had to do that.
Right.
Where it was just
Yeah,
like
they
kind
kind
of
of
a
had to just make
reaction.
it surprising, or else she would have
Like
called
she's
for
just
help or something.
randomly sitting on the couch as his family is like reunited. Like it's just
It's like a false sense of security they gave us, and then
Yeah.
they take it away.
yeah, they're like everything's happy and she's like boom. And yeah, that's why I feel like I love it so much. It just really wraps up the movie well.
All right, awesome. Any other comments?
No,
All good.
I'm. Then this is up there for me as far as supernatural horror goes.
Cool. Okay, well, let's before we get into our overall scores, let's do what we call the never split up moment. Jackie, since you are our special guest, we will let you go first. Normally we have a poll from the previous episode, but we don't have that this time, so we're just going to pick our own order. Not that it really matters too much, but I have I have one that, and I refrained from saying it during the review, but I have a major thing with this movie that has always bothered me, so I kind of hope you don't steal it from me, but I'll let you go first, and let's hear what you got.
So I actually had another one, which I want to say after I hear your guys.
Okay.
But the one I ended up with, and why I didn't correct you, but I specified that Josh was like huffing and puffing and like let Dalton go. Because that's my never split up moment where I just feel like, come on, they made it to the house. He wasn't going to help Dalton like into the room. And then he stayed because he like huffs and puffs and he's like on the counter. And then all of a sudden he's like standing yelling at the other demon.
Bride.
So
like he's not out of breath anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And like it just seemed like kind of, I just feel like they did that obviously to make the ending they wanted to happen. But that piece really ticks me off because I was like, we're not playing around here. Like you traveled all this way and then you're sitting here yelling at the bride. Like I just feel like they could have maybe changed that a little bit. So that's my never split up. I wish he just helped Dalton into the room and then just went back to his body. I feel like it just, I don't know, ticks me off that he's like wasting time like yelling at this.
Was that yours?
No, that's a good. No, it wasn't actually.
Okay,
That's a good
Very
moment
cool.
because that they literally split up in that moment. I actually didn't even think of that moment, so that's really good.
So that's a legit split up, and it's not a slasher movie,
I
so
can
that's
try
pretty
to
good.
defend the writers on that, and the way I think of it is because he's been repressed and he's not used to astral projecting. That maybe
And
his
he's been
spirit is,
hypnotized,
like,
literally
tired.
Like, he's just
But like to your point, Jackie, as soon as Dalton leaves, he's like no longer out of breath anymore, and he's like got all this energy. So I think it was just kind of. I kind of chalk it to just
once he saw that thing when he saw the fuck.
I think it was just kind of lazy writing. They kind of just threw that in there to get them to split up. So that's a good moment, yeah, because that will probably bother me the next time I watch it now too.
What's yours, Noel?
You want me to go next?
Yeah, well, I want to know your big because you have a big one.
Yeah, I have a big one, and maybe this can be explained, but I've seen this movie a lot of times, and I don't think it's explained in the movie. Why the fuck? Because Elise is the expert, right? But this is my moment is really Elise. Why the fuck did she decide to astral project Josh and hypnotize him in the second house? Why didn't they go back to the original house so he can be right next to his son when he goes into the further? She knows how everything works. She knows that the son is probably in the original house in the further. So why have Josh have to travel all the way through the further to the original house just to get to his son? It makes no sense whatsoever. They should have brought them both back to the original house and did it there. That way everything is right there and they don't have to travel as far. That bugs me every single time. I think it's kind of a plot hole. I don't think it's really ever explained why they don't do that. Because, and I asked Jackie this and she didn't know, but it's not like it's been months and months, right? Like they still own that house, right? Like
they sold it.
They did sell it?
Yeah, they sold it. Yeah, they can't afford two mortgages on a teaching salary.
So did they do another time jump that they just didn't explain?
I do think that I don't think it's like cut and then like the next day. I think it did like. It's not. I mean, I think we're supposed to understand that like a little bit more time has passed. That's why she's in shock when she sees the tiny Tim.
But like, how much time has passed? Because they don't. The house has got to still be vacant, though. I mean, at least bring them outside the house or close to the house. I mean, I just it bothers me every time. I don't know why they do that.
Dolan,
but does she really know how the further works? I know she knows shit, but she's never been in it.
Yeah, because she tells Josh, she said, you have to go and get Dalton. He's lost in the further, and he's lost like in the house where he got captured in the first place, because that was when he got taken. So what were you going to say, Jackie?
To defend you, and I noticed that they said this. I don't know, I never noticed it. it was when Elise first came into the house with Specs and Tucker, and she's like, "Did you do reading on the first house?" And Specs was like, "Oh no, I didn't, but I will go and do that."
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so the house obviously hasn't been sold, so they have
No, it's
access
definitely
to
been
that
sold.
original
It's
house.
definitely been sold. He probably went. I don't know if he knocked on the door and asked, but there's no way they didn't sell it. That's even bigger.
I
That
think
bothers me
you're
even more if they didn't sell the
overestimating
house,
how
'cause
quick
that
it
really makes
takes
no
to sell a
sense.
house. Like, I don't think it's been
Quick.
months and months, dude.
And not in months. It hasn't been up in months.
It takes a long time to put a house on the market and sell it. I don't know.
I don't know. They definitely There's no way
You're
they
really
can afford a
defending that?
house.
Oh, damn! I thought that was going to be a universal.
And I also
like, you're
think.
right,
I mean, I'm
Nolan.
not going to defend it, but I also think that I don't know if the further is like the further could be a maze even if they're in the original house, because the further's not our reality. It's like you don't know, even if he was in that house, he could still have to travel.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because I never even thought about that whole scenario about bringing him to the original house, even if it was
because
sold,
especially at the end, he has to go from that house to the other house where his body is. It's just an unnecessary step that they could have avoided if they just went back to the original house. So yeah, that's my never split up moment. It's just a little thing that has always irked me that has never been explained. I'll have to go on Reddit and see if other people have pointed that out or not.
That was never even like a thing that I was like, oh, that never.
It's an obscure moment. Yeah, it's not like a literal split up moment like Jackie's. So
okay, mine's like so basic, but it's literally what kickstarts like the movie. I'm like, Dalton, why the fuck are you going into the attic by yourself, dude? That's my never split up moment when he goes into the attic and he hears shit and he keeps going further into the attic, literally. So yeah, mine's nice and easy. Mine's simple. I'm like, dude, I'm not going in a fucking creepy attic. Even if, I don't care. I'm not doing it. So yeah, he goes into the attic and he's the one who causes this fucking shit to happen. I mean, of course, I'm gonna pick the kid who does something stupid.
So you're just anti attic. Just never.
I'm
going
anti Dalton going up there, and then he hears something, and instead of just like sprinting out of there, he just like turns around and waits and goes. I'm like, you're stupid, kid. Get the fuck out of there, man. What are you doing?
Does he hear something? I'm just trying to remember the scene. Does he hear
thinks
something
he sees
before he
something.
goes on the ladder?
He thinks
Or was
he
that
sees
after?
something at first, and then he goes on the ladder, and then he thinks he hears something, and that makes him fall. And then he falls, and he gets up again. Then he hears the crackling.
He was trying to turn on the light.
Because he thinks he's
okay. I thought he was just trying to turn it on so he can play with his toy, but he actually heard something or saw something.
No, he
heard. In a fucking attic. Yeah, he heard. Yeah, he I'm like, dude,
yeah,
come on now.
That's a good moment.
So that's mine. Like, Dalton, dude, come on, man. Stay out of the attic, bro.
Okay, so we got 3 different characters. That's pretty cool. Jackie has Josh.
And none of them are Renee. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Well, because she's honestly a really good character, but can I say my second one that I was going to originally say? So the first one I thought of, and then when this moment happened, I think I thought of it when we watched it today. Well, okay. But the Josh one. But the first one I had was just it didn't make any sense that Elise was like alone, like just sitting there on the couch. Like I feel like she should have at least been, I guess she didn't want to be in the kitchen when he was eating or whatever, but like.
Well, doesn't he place her
at the very end
after he kills her? But doesn't he place her on the couch after he strangles
Oh,
her?
yeah, that's right. She's no. Was she sitting or standing?
I think she was standing because she takes his picture, no?
Because I can't remember if she was sitting and then she went to stand to take the picture, now that I'm thinking about it. But I feel like Specs and Tucker, they went into the van, they're like packing all their stuff, and she's just sitting there. So that was what my original one was going to be. That they shouldn't have split up. They should have just left together. But then I saw the Josh moment. I'm like, no, I think that ticks me off more.
That's a good one. That's a good one, and I didn't even really think of that when I was watching that movie. So that's a strong moment because it's really not like you said. It's like, wait, you did all of this and you're not going to make sure he gets to his body. He's like, you go ahead. I'll catch up. It is kind of silly.
She made sure way too late. That's the never. She checked too late.
Yeah, it's kind of silly moment. Okay, cool. Yeah, we got 3 different characters, so this will be a good poll. Awesome. So let's get into these scores now.
This is going to be interesting.
Overall
Very
scores.
Interesting, this part.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
I want one of you. I want Anthony to go first. I'll let Anthony go first because Jackie went first for the moment. I won't make her go first, and then I'll go second because I probably will be sandwiched in between really good scores. So I think it'll be good if I go second.
I absolutely love this movie. It's up, like I said, it's up there with supernatural horror wise. It, kickstarted one of my, if you watch our franchise episode, it kickstarted one of my favorite horror franchises. This made it into my top 10. I think the acting's perfect. The characters I really connect with. In my opinion, the jump scares are one of the most effective jump scares, and they're not like annoying. Like in certain horror movies
Mm-hmm.
that they do the fake out jump scares, I think these are really effective. James Wan's directing, the writing is awesome. I don't think that it would have worked as well without James Wan behind the camera for the introduction to this franchise, and you could feel that. I have a couple my nitpicks where I think you could tell they have a tiny bit of budgetary issues because they did it so
Mm.
quick and on the fly. They didn't realize it was going to blow up, but like I'm fine with it because the suspense and the atmosphere make up for it. Like I said, I think maybe like I agree with Jackie that one scene should have probably been at night. They're probably like, oh, we only are budgeted for this day, shit like that. You know what I mean? Um, but other than little nitpicks, this is up there, man. This is all timer. It's gonna be one of the best PG-13 horror movies that's ever been made. It's gonna be a 9.4.
Okay. Awesome. 9.4. That is a glowing score.
I love that.
Mine, it's not going to be as high. I do like this movie. You mentioned James Wan. Maybe it's a little unfair, but like knowing what James Wan is capable of, I do like some of his movies a lot better. So I do get a little bit of a letdown that like maybe it is budgetary or something that he couldn't really do everything that he wanted to do. Maybe it's the fact that it's PG-13. This movie just, it's very good. It just doesn't, I don't even really know if it's explainable because my nitpicks are similar to yours, Anthony, in terms of scope of like how important they are to like me liking this movie. I think it just doesn't strike a chord with me as much as it does with you guys. The jump scares never really super impacted me the first time around, so I don't have that memory of that theater experience where I was like super. We talked about this with Paranormal Activity. How that's one of my favorite theater experiences. That I was like totally invested in. I didn't really get that for this original movie. I do think it's a very strong movie, though. If I had to say like an overall nitpick, and this is really for the entire franchise without too many spoilers, but I think that The Further is so cool and that I want more scenes in The Further. I wish one of the sequels really took us into The Further, like the entire movie, and explained like more of the ins and outs of what goes on there and stuff. You really don't get that in the sequels, and I wish you got that somewhere in the franchise, in the first one too, because you're right, Anthony. It's such a cool, the astral projection and stuff. It's such a cool concept, and I kind of wish we got a little bit of more of that. But no, this is a solid movie. The acting definitely helps it a lot. You really feel for Renee. You're really rooting for Josh to save Dalton at the end. I mean, Dalton is such a good kid actor. And shout out to Ty Simpkins. He's they got the whole cast back for the new one.
I love
and I'm
continuity. I love it.
it plays so well. And we actually said this when we left the theater. Like, we're both so happy that they got like the same actors and stuff, especially Dalton, because he does a good job in this new movie, and it's so nice that it's the same actor. So I really appreciate that. But yeah, the acting is probably the standout for me. I don't love the villains. You know me, I'm a villain guy. I the Red Demon and even the Black Bride. We don't really get enough of the Black Bride. For me to really love her. Yeah, the sequel's all about her, and we'll get into that next time. But I don't love the villains either. Maybe if we had a little bit more emphasis on the villain, I would love it more. But it's not an all-timer for me. I'm going to give this a solid 7.6.
Okay, good. At least you're not in the sixes.
No.
Okay, that's a good one.
He's like, okay.
Is it my turn?
It is your turn.
Okay. I'm trying to think.
I know it's hard.
Yeah, we've been doing this for like almost 30 episodes now, so
Because I'm trying to think of what my favorite. Because I remember making, because it's hard for me to think on the spot sometimes. I'm looking up. Remember when that thing on Facebook happened? It was like, oh, name your, like each day, name like one of your favorite horror movies.
Like horror, you're right.
So I'm trying to think of it in the avenue of what I put, which I'm going to quickly say. Insidious. When was this? 2020. Insidious, The Strangers, Paranormal Activity, Prom Night, Scream. I love Prom Night so much. With
Which
Brittany
one?
Snow.
The remake.
With Brittany Snow.
Yeah.
I
She's
love
a
that
2000s
movie.
kid like us.
I love that movie so much. Orphan.
That should be rated R.
That movie's messed up. Orphan, Conjuring. I don't know why I have When a Stranger Calls on here, but I did love that movie. Yeah, the remake too. I do love that movie. That was another movie that got me into. And Trick or Treat. Oh, and It.
Okay.
So
you like the supernatural, a lot of supernatural.
Yeah, I'm getting a ghosty vibe from you.
Yeah, I think that's why I love, well, I do have a spooky sleeve here, guys. I do love, well, not Prom Night, that's a little different, but yeah, I guess all the other ones. So thinking in regards of those, you know what? I think I'm going to give it 8.5. Yeah, no, I was like really thinking 8.5.
Very good.
Okay, so not like a perfect movie for you, but still very strong. 8.5 out of 10 is a very, very good score. So you think it's excellent, obviously.
Yeah, that's
you wanted to come on this podcast, yeah.
For this movie.
Not quite your favorite, though.
I think, because I'm looking at this list, I feel like I like It and Orphan more.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You like It more? Wow.
You like Orphan more. That surprises me more.
I love
Orphan's good. No, it's good. It's good.
I have a weird attachment to that movie. People used to call me that girl all the time when I was younger.
Okay. So I'm surprised you don't hate it.
Well, one of my best friends.
They called you Esther?
They always called me Esther. That was an inside joke.
That name just gets me now.
I know. They would call me Esther. And yeah, I feel like 8.5. That's mine. So
what do we have? An 8.5 for Jackie, 7.6 for Nolan, and then I'm a 9.3 or 4? I can't remember.
4. I think you said 9.4. Cool. Yeah, I didn't know, that's Anthony, if this was going to be like in the nines for you, if this is like an all-timer for you.
Especially, I don't know, something about that it's PG-13 that it really
for the
pushes
PG-13,
the edge.
Yeah.
For PG, yeah, it's one of the better ones, really it is.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, well, that's about it. Before we end it, I know, Ant, you wanted to shout out our last episode, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, of course I do. Guys, right before the 4th of July holiday, we released our episode I Know What You Did Last Summer, and that one for me is, I mean, another all-timer. I mean, watch that movie, my score is, pretty up there. But it's a really good episode about a really good 90s slasher, and we're 90s kids, so we had a lot to say, and it kind of got lost in the holiday shuffle. I kind of wish maybe we did it a week earlier, but it's still there, so make sure you guys check it out. And I wanted to wait to release that poll until we got more views on it, so I'm going to release that this week, maybe a day or two before I release the poll for this, and I'll just let them both run for the entire week. So you guys are going to have 2 polls to do this week, and catch up on that episode and then watch this one as well. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And we can do an announcement.
Do it for Helen Shivers, guys. Come on.
And we can do the announcement for next week. We are covering our first international movie. This is going to be a first for the podcast. We are covering Rec. I don't remember when it was made. Do you know the year?
Early 2000s.
It's a Spanish movie, Rec. People might be more familiar with the remake, Quarantine. Is the American version, but we're gonna cover the OG and get into that franchise. That's a cool franchise, and I'm excited to cover our first foreign film. So that's gonna be fun. That'll
Excellent choice that you made, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited for that. Jackie, have you seen Rec, or have you just watched Quarantined? Because I know you're a fan of
Are
Quarantine.
you gonna do Quarantine? I do love that movie.
We're gonna do Quarantine eventually.
We'll do it. Maybe we'll do it right after Rec. Like, not right after, but it'll be the next in the franchise to kind of compare the two. Okay. But, yeah, we'll have to talk about it for the future. But,
no, I didn't watch it.
Yeah, cool.
Good. You'll have to
it's
watch
pretty
it
much,
yeah,
it's pretty much the same movie. Like, they pretty much did the shot-for-shot version. For,
I feel like you said that
audience,
because we watched Quarantine after I
It's a slightly different vibe because it kind of looks like it looks a tiny bit different, but it's worth a watch. I mean, it's watch it.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Yeah, but for until next time, follow us on Twitter at neversplituppod. We're also on Instagram at neversplituppod. Look for our polls. Thanks to everyone who is listening and watching on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube. We really want to get to 100 subscribers. I think we're stuck on 85 right now, so we would really appreciate it if you subscribe, because more importantly with YouTube, we unlock more features on that website and we can interact with you guys more the more subscribers we get. I hate how they gatekeep that, but it is what it is. You can also find us on Facebook, follow us on Spotify and iTunes. We're now on Audible and Amazon Music, so you can find us there if you prefer to listen there. But until next time, I'm Nolan. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And thanks to Jackie, my wife, for being the special guest for this special 30th episode. We hope you guys have a good week, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.